Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, artists, you name it, all over the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have an amazing guest coming to me from Portugal. His name is Karel Kubat. He is the founder of Union. Karel, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me. It's going to be great. So let me ask you first to kick things off. What is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
So my original background is actually biochem, way back in 2013-14. Went into crypto around 2015 as a programmer initially. Did some work in the Solidity space and invested in different ICOs. And then later went to contribute to Cosmos and Polkadot. So my background is originally, like many people, kind of floating into crypto, getting my toes wet, and then slowly more on the tech side itself. And by now, I've contributed to Cosmos, Polkadot, Ethereum, worked as CTO of Composable Finance, and now founded Union, our interoperability project.
Great. So biochem to tech to crypto. What made you choose that?
So biochem has a lot of statistics and programming on the side, and especially mathematics. It's a pretty hardcore STEM degree. And so that kind of gave me a foundation in logical thinking as well as programming, MATLAB, Python, R, and such. Biochem in Europe, however, is very hierarchical. Basically, all big pharma companies are in Germany, and you can imagine a very corporate German man wearing a tie, being your boss for 30 years, and you needing to pay your dues before you can finally get promoted and actually get the job that you want. And that was not really an industry I wanted to go in. For me, I needed to make a bigger difference overall and work in a field that was a lot faster moving overall. And obviously, I had the skill set to work in tech, given that I had the programming background and the algorithmic background. So that's why I initially made the pivot. And for me, crypto aligned very well with what I want in my life, which is the sovereignty portion, right? If I excel and do very well, I want my career to excel, or I want my contributions to the world to be very significant. And I want to be in full control of all of that. And to be honest, that to me is what crypto really is, right? It's a meritocracy.
I like you already. So that's good. So let's get into it then. Union, what is it all about?
Yeah, so we founded Union about 14 months ago to bring better infrastructure, better bridging, faster and more secure to the modular stack, to all of these new chains that are being created. What you're seeing kind of right now happening is we got loads of new ecosystems being spawned, consisting of many chains slash rollups, Dimension, Saga, Movement Labs, but also L1s like Barachain. We see apps going to their own chains specifically, like DYDX and Hyperliquid and ENS. And so we're slowly moving to this world where crypto is no longer like 100 chains with ecosystems on each chains, but more 10,000 individual chains and rollups with apps on top of that. Now, for an end user, this is going to sound like a nightmare, of course, with the current infrastructure, right? You would constantly need to bridge, reuse wallets. This is actually not the utopia that we want. But for a developer, it kind of is, because it means that you control your product much better. Like you don't have congestion anymore. You don't need to share your block space with other apps. So you're no longer fighting for that rare commodity if your app goes viral. But the question now is, can we give the end user what they want? Like still that consistent, composable user experience where they don't need to switch wallets, they don't need to necessarily go to bridge UIs, they can just interact with all of these different chains as if they're one app. That's kind of the thesis that we founded Union with. Like that's what the world needs to be for all of this to work. And the question is, how do we get there? And to be honest, the fundamental lacking point still is the low-level bridge infrastructure. It's slow, it's relatively centralized, right? Like few oracles are multi-sig when most of it. And that means that there's a kind of scaling limit on how many networks they can support. There's a security backdoor, kind of, right? If your oracle is run in the US by a US company for your bridge, then technically the US company government controls this bridge, controls the oracle. And so for Union, that's the first thing we're fixing, making sure that bridging infrastructure no longer relies on any outside entities and that it is permissionless and highly secure. And the way we do that is using zero-knowledge cryptography.
About some follow-ups there. So well, yeah, I'm going to ask it. With you, we're not going to need oracles anymore.
Well, it depends on what the purpose for the oracle is, right? You kind of have oracles for price data and such. If you need information from Binance, you will always need an oracle. But if you need an oracle to facilitate bridging between one chain and the other chain, then you really don't need an oracle in between that. You can do this without any third-party entities by generating a ZKP for the one chain and sending it to the other chain. And then you have a trustless connection between the two.
Interesting. I see it. Okay. So you have partnerships. You mentioned Barachain, but you have partnerships with AgLayer, Barachain, and others. What improvements have you been able to bring to the market as a result of those partnerships?
Yeah. So what you're seeing right now, for example, what we're going to put to testnet probably next week is connections into Barachain testnet for Celestia, Stride, and soon Babylon as well. Currently, there's like no way to get those assets in. And at the same time, there's loads of staked assets from this ecosystem. So lots of value that can be unlocked, that can be actively participating in DeFi. With the AgLayer, basically what we offer is the entirety of the Cosmos ecosystem, access to different rollups running in the Polygon ecosystem without needing to go through Ethereum. So with a lot of these kind of legacy solutions that existed, you could perhaps facilitate this, not always, by going directly through Ethereum. The problem with directly going through Ethereum is it's expensive as hell, right? Like you're paying $100 in gas fees. So really the trick is always, can we like have the same security and higher speeds without actually needing to go through Ethereum for these different routes? Because then we save the end user $100 in fees. Right, a transfer from Celestia to Barachain needs only cost maybe like a cent or something like that, like a very small amount. So you're dealing with very different scale of economies.
It's $100 each time.
Well, if you go through Ethereum, right, because that's an Ethereum gas fee. But if you use Union, you don't need to pay that.
Got it. So you're already saving users a lot of money. That's really cool. So I want to find out from you this concept of the sovereign trilemma, right? What is the sovereign trilemma? And then what opportunities and challenges exist because of it?
Yeah. So this is mainly a trilemma for builders. Let's say you want to build your own community ecosystem, your own protocol, right? Your choices really are do a smart contract or build your own chain. When you build a smart contract and you build your whole product around that, then what you gain is a lot of interconnectivity. So that's our one check. You do have that because you're connected to all other smart contracts and users on that chain. But you're no longer sovereign. The chain itself controls your gas fees, if your transactions get included. If a CryptoKitties launches the same day or a week later and gets very popular, then your users pay more in transaction fees because some other app is slurping up all of this block space, right? So you lose the kind of sovereign control portion yourself. Now, if you choose the blockchain, building that like your own chain, then you are very sovereign. You have like your own users, other apps don't compete with you on your block space, but you lose that interconnectivity. You're no longer able to access liquidity of other users, of other chains, or easily interact with them unless you rely on a centralized bridge. But if you rely on a centralized bridge, now we're giving the keys to the kingdom again to this US run Oracle or this like third party company, right? So we're not really sovereign. We're technically like in control by a bridge protocol now. And finally, the third thing is you can choose to basically just not connect your chain to anything. Then you are fully sovereign, but then you lose that interconnectivity altogether. And so with the trilemma, it's hard to get all three. And that's what we saw to like fix with Union is how can we enable builders to have a sovereign app, be completely connected to everything out there, and at the same time not be subservient to a bridge protocol.
So how do you okay, so I understand that's being solved. You're doing it. How are you, like, how exactly are you able to do it? Because I know we're not.
Yeah. It's really an effect of not having that third-party off-chain component be a security critical feature. So without that Oracle or multisig, what the system becomes is ZKPs being transferred between the two chains. Now anyone can generate these ZKPs. So it's not just Union Labs, the company. It's not just our specific relayers. Any user could generate them in the browser. Any like validator for a different chain, or to be honest, programmer or technology enthusiast could spin up one of these relayers and generate zero-knowledge proofs. And that means that if Union Labs disappears entirely, like we all retire or pack up our bags and close the project, this system still functions. It doesn't go down. So it has that same property that a blockchain basically has. It's truly decentralized. And that means that as a product builder, building your own app chain, Union does not become an Achilles heel. It's not a backdoor. It's not something that might like take down your product or censor your product at some point. It's something that you can always rely on.
And the innovation really has to do with the zero knowledge, right? So there's role of zero knowledge in this narrative out there, modular versus monolithic. It's been a narrative that I've seen all the Solana VCs yell about for a year. The role of zero knowledge in monolithic versus modular tech stacks. What is its role, and why is it the next big opportunity in both?
Yeah. So zero knowledge cryptography, let's assume, like, I'm not going to go into how it actually works, but what it allows you to do is perform a lot of computation off chain and then verify all that computation on chain in a very lightweight program. So let's say you do massive data analysis off chain, you can verify that the data analysis is correct on chain with spending just very little gas. Like, it's very cheap to verify this. And so you can rethink a lot of products, because right now some smart contracts, they cost a ton of gas to do something, right? Because the smart contract is very big, executes loads of lines of code. Now, in a lot of cases, it's more efficient to do all of this execution off chain and then just provide the zero knowledge proof on chain. And then you get a gas saving in total. That's the scaling component of ZKP tech. And that's actually what zero knowledge rollups are based on. That's their whole idea. Perform all of this computation off chain on processing transactions, and then just put a proof of validity on chain. We use it very similar to ZK rollups because trustless bridging, which is based on light clients, is basically running a chain inside another chain. That's kind of fundamentally what you're doing here. And so if you're going to do that naively, it's going to double the computation cost per chain, and you're going to be wasting a lot of gas. So that's not a feasible approach. So we actually run that other chain inside a zero knowledge prover, and that's the proofs we submit to other chains. That gets you the same scaling behavior, and we get the same security guarantees, and the chains are fully aware of each other. But because we use EKP tech, we spend very little gas on it, which keeps transaction costs for users very cheap. You see ZKP tech being used in privacy as well. That's a completely different kind of use case category for it. So that's like we ask people not to confuse those. In modular versus monolithic, so how does it apply here? In modular chains, usually chains offload certain parts of their function to other chains, or they become rollups, and they kind of, instead of being let's say like one company that does everything, a conglomerate, instead they're a bunch of lean startups that use each other's like products and just focus on their core business. Now, in the blockchain world, that works very well if you know that the parties you are working with are not cheating you, right? Like, I offload a security critical component to another chain, I do need to know that the chain is executing it properly. And that's very often where ZKPs are being used for. For example, in Celestia and EigenDA, they're used for verifying that the data has been made available, right? So when you actually do this data availability posting, at the core is cryptography to verify that it's actually occurred. And so it rears its head in lots of small places, or small, a lot of big places all the time as a core technology component.
And what if you are being cheated?
Hmm?
And what if you are being cheated?
In this case, for example, if Celestia, let's say, is not actually storing the data or is not storing it in a sufficient amount, what happens when the rollup settles on Ethereum? It needs to post the data to Ethereum itself. So Ethereum can basically deny the next settlement of the rollup because the contract is going to say, I do not have sufficient access to the data that's necessary to settle. So you need to provide me the data directly. And that keeps users secure in this case, right? So the ZKP side is used for verifying that stuff has been executed correctly.
Got it. So it's a checks and balance, really.
It's always checks and balances, but computing checks and balances in contracts can be very expensive. Doing it as a ZKP can be very cheap.
Got it. So I'm intrigued. You said, if ZKPs enable us to reimagine or reinvent the way that products are designed and products are built. So I'm wondering what products are possible because of you guys, because of Union, because of ZKs. What can be reimagined?
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily a reimagining because we already have a very wide set of products in crypto, right? What I would say is right now our products are actually very limited. And when we want to have very scalable products, we need to go centralized, right? People use Binance, and Binance is a much more fully featured product than Uniswap is, for example. And that's because Uniswap needs to run on the Ethereum L1, can only do a limited amount of features, cannot do proper order books, for example, needs to use liquidity pools and all of that. And when you go modular and use ZK Tech, you could just build a decentralized Binance, right? And have exactly the same features and everything available, but run that as a fully decentralized product as its own chain. That's, to be honest, very close to what Hyperliquid and DYDX are, and perhaps might transform in the next couple of years. And so with a lot of products we have right now, I would say we're kind of at the V1 of the products where they kind of work, but they're still very limited and they only work if you have 1,000 or 2,000 users. But can they really handle 500 million users, right? Can we build those web scale products yet? And the reality is not on Ethereum, right? We just cannot. Ethereum itself cannot handle that many users. So you need to offload computation, go modular to accomplish this.
It's interesting. I think things have changed, but I want to find out how much they've changed. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with BNB, somebody there who they were getting into DeFi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ethereum side, I'm seeing Aave, I'm seeing synthetics. I'm looking at the BNB chain. They have wrapped Litecoin, wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped Ethereum, but not too much else. How has it grown since then? And what are the new possibilities because of growth and development?
You mean in DeFi in general, what you believe ZK will allow there to occur? I think it can do much more complex products overall. Right now, DeFi, if you look into the actual code, how the products work, you can only access data within that block, the current state. So it works kind of okay for swaps. Options and such become harder. Automatically rebalancing ETFs are quite difficult as well because you don't really have access to historical data in a contract. You only have access to the current data itself, and that makes stuff a lot harder. So ZK Tech here can make things a lot simpler because when you do this, use for example Herodotus or Axiom, you can create zero knowledge proofs over historical Ethereum data. So a contract can request, give me the average price of these 10 assets over the last 3 years, and then do something with that. So that allows you to create more complex financial derivatives. And that's, to be honest, the big one. Another one is right now we have to keep our financial products kind of simple and we can't interconnect them too much, because when one price updates, another price needs to update. You kind of get this like cascading price update when products depend on each other. And computing what those new prices are should be is quite expensive as well on chain. So we mainly rely on oracles and on liquidation bots to accomplish the goal of updating those prices and balancing all of this out. CK Tech, you can improve that as well. What I am myself most excited about, to be honest, so the DeFi portion, I think, will just become a lot more efficient. We're going to see new users, more activity, but not necessarily products that look very new, like that to you will feel very new. But we're going to see better integration with the Web2 world. So projects like ZK P2P allow you to actually on-ramp yourself. So you can use bank transfers to get money on chain and mint your own stable coins. And they use zero knowledge cryptography to verify that you have transferred the money in the correct account before minting the funds. And the same when you want to release the tokens. You can also go off-ramp yourself without the need for a centralized party here, except of course the bank that you're off-ramping into.
I want to ask about the centralized party. You said Web2 has a better opportunity to integrate, and you also said it'd be useful for ETF rebalancing. In January, all these big companies and got the ability in the U.S. to sell Bitcoin ETFs, and recently they got approval for Ethereum ETFs. How do you see Union and what you guys do being able to help these massive financial institutions?
So yeah, for us, ideally, I'm really excited about products which are kind of DeFi in the front, business in the back, connecting the kind of TradFi world to DeFi, like Athena, right? Athena basically allows you to get exposure to yields that's being generated completely off chain. If you want to do this properly, you need very secure connections to the TradFi world, right? Like DeFi needs to be able to rely that we're not being rugged by the TradFi world. And that's basically Union's product, right? That's basically secure bridging. It's verifying that the other party indeed is doing what they're saying that they're doing, locking up tokens, locking up funds. So that's one portion I'm very excited about. So we're probably going to see a lot more hybrid DeFi or DeFi connected to permissioned ledgers, right? Getting products on chain that have exposure to private ledgers that banks use in between each other. That's like kind of what we're looking to support. Regarding ETFs and such, Union doesn't really care about that too much, to be honest. I'm a crypto maxi, token maxi. So for me, that's the more important portion here is actually getting the regular person to make yields to see better products. I'm not too excited in helping boomers make more on their massive retirements, if I'm going to be honest. For me, it's for the degens and the hipsters that I like to support.
I told you at the beginning I like you. Yeah, same. I don't want to see the boomers get more money. You mentioned early on one rabbit hole, not a rabbit hole, but privacy, right? Challenges still remain in our current environment, right? For that, and those include privacy, censorship, and user control, right? What would be the result of building a fully decentralized internet that solve these issues?
So not sure like a fully decentralized internet, like indeed like there's the possibility for censorship, but a fully decentralized internet is very hard because the internet in the end needs physical infrastructure, and physical infrastructure is kind of always controlled by governments. Like perhaps with Starlink or something like that you can do it, right? But as long as you have wires going through the ground, there's always a point of entry here. Within crypto itself, like for these topics and privacy especially, I think privacy is very overlooked at the moment. I like to like just divide it into two categories. There's the category of like permanent privacy, and that's the one we are all very familiar with. That's Tornado Cash, Zcash, Penumbra, like these chains that try to provide you privacy forever as a human right. Now, these, like here, the discussion always goes, are these for criminals, right? Why do you need stuff to be private forever? I personally think that privacy is a human right, especially financial privacy. But what people overlook is short-lived privacy, perhaps privacy for just 10 minutes or for half an hour. And now, why is this important? The only way to protect against MEV is privacy. As long as you can inspect a transaction, someone will always be able to front run you, right? Because they know what the transaction is going to do. So they will always use their technological advantage, access to validators to try to make yields. If you ever have a private chain where you don't know what transactions will do, it's impossible to extract MEV. So short-lived privacy, let's say just 3 minutes, 10 minutes, actually gives users better prices, right? When they perform swaps on Uniswap or when they take out loans or whatever they do, they actually get a better price in the end than on a public chain. So that's why I think, like, especially like short-lived privacy is something we shouldn't overlook. Because right now, if you look at, for example, Pump.fun or at least like different meme coin indexes, arbitrage bots and MEV bots are extracting about, I think, 150k SOL a month. I'm not sure what the time frame was, but pretty massive amounts is what users are losing out on. Not sure how familiar you are with the whole intense and chain abstraction narrative.
If you could brief me, that'd be great.
Yeah, so there's these chains like Particle Network, but also what Methbots is doing with Suave, where as an end user, you can just describe like, I want 1 Ethereum, and here's 3,000 USD, and some off-chain bot. But you describe like the end result that you want, and you let some other party figure out what to do. So that party might say, I'm going to use Uniswap and just buy it straight up, or I'm going to trade your USD for wrapped BTC and then trade the wrapped BTC for ETH. Like they figure out the complex path that you need to do. You just get the end result. Now, without privacy, you're always going to be paying the maximum price. So if you say, I want to get as much Ethereum as I can for my 3K USD, but at least 1 ETH, then you're always going to get 1 ETH because you're going to get front run to the max. If you add privacy on top of this, then you're actually going to get better or best execution. So you're going to end up with more ETH in the end through these protocols. So that's why privacy is such an important feature here.
Interesting that you mentioned that, 'cause I was just thinking about how to not be seen by the by the bots. The other day when I was buying some stuff. So it's good. So yeah, interesting times we live in right now. So I want to thank you, very much for speaking with me today about this. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I have one last question. Really is how can people find out more information about Union, about you, start using your protocol, about and what you guys are up to?
Yeah, just go to union.build and they'll lead you down the rabbit hole, and follow us on Twitter at union_build, and the same, follow me at Kaiser Karel on Twitter too, and then you're going to find all about our products.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.